films kind of, I think, encourage their audience to challenge their reality and what they believe in. And I think this film's probably doing that more directly than any film that he's made. I think it's throwing up all these really direct, confronting questions that are like life's riddles, and they're like encapsulated in this unconventional, like domestic family setting. And I think it's like, yeah, I think it's a really good movie to watch for where we're at in the world. The story is just such an intense thing to get inside of, and to realize the journey that the characters are going to go on throughout in this like very domestic, inescapable setting with these giant themes in it. It just asks these huge questions. The film, to me, even though it has these huge themes and it's very hard to answer what it's about, and it may sound really cheesy saying it, for me it's a love story. It's a love story between a family. Night has his own process and also his own kind of philosophy about filmmaking and about acting as well. So I think like I've really enjoyed slotting into what his version of making a film is, and it's very individual to him. So it's yeah, it's been a pleasure to kind of like learn from him and be on this. It is a wild film. It's a wild ride of a story. But yeah, it's really exciting to be part of it.
Stories of confinement and telling very large stories through a small window. That constriction, that balance, a juxtaposition of the size of the story and the way we're telling it really appealed to me and evoked my imagination in a very powerful way. And I think movie making, especially going to the movie theaters, needs to be a very experiential thing at this point. Why do you leave your house and go to the movie theaters? Well, you want to have the deepest, most profound experience. And this type of storytelling where you count on the incompleteness of it. That's a whole thesis of storytelling that I ascribe to, that you don't fill in everything and let the audience member do the dance with you. This isn't a dance performed for them entirely, but you require them to get up and be part of the dance. And that incompleteness that is inherent in these kind of stories where you're very confined and you're imagining everything. I mean, Twilight Zone, lived off of that. That conjuring of your imagination is required to finish the painting. That group, the three of them, were very much a family, Jonathan, Kristen, and Ben. It was magic to see. They just wanted to be around each other, and they did hang out with each other. They go ice skating and doing this, and they were a family. Kristen's mom came over to me and said, she sometimes looked over at them and was like, wait, are they the family? She's like, I don't even feel like like that feels like the real family, because they were so, like, the connection was so real. So very, very lucky that they found each other and that we all found each other. I put every word or not word, the word that I chose not to put in there is done for a particular reason. And you may want to conform the dialogue to make it comfortable, to make it easier to say, but that hitch, that overstatement, that redundancy, or that awkwardness, or the flip of the verbiage of that's how I saw the character dealing with it. So before we go to let's change everything, okay? I want you to try as much as you can to get the original intention. Because if I give you that opportunity to let's change things, let's just constantly change things, yes, I understand how that's expedient and we can get to a truthful thing with an actor quickly. I get that, and especially with TV and things and when you're rushing and you're doing, but we're not doing that. We are going to do this one shot and we're going to spend hours on it. So I want to talk to you about trying to get that hitch in there that seems hard for you, that little weird like pause, and where does the anger come from? Why does that thing, let's talk about that rather than saying, I can't do it, or I don't understand it, end of conversation, or wouldn't it be easier to do that? And I always say, wow, you've really made it smoother. Did we improve it? did you now it's easier to hear and easier to say and all that stuff. So we have those conversations. It's because I've spent 5, 6, 7, 8 months alone thinking about that, and our instincts under complete duress and pressure sometimes can make us do things that are easier but not necessarily better for the situation. And we rehearse, and in rehearsals we talk through all of that. I completely forget that it's about a gay couple, honestly, and I just see it as a love story. And strangely, and I told the guys this, that so strangely attached to their expression of love and the way they told their love between them in this tale, that I just saw myself in this story as a straight guy. That's what love feels like to me too, and then maybe in some way, because it's marginalized or precarious and vulnerable, and the world isn't quite a place that's nurturing of that, I respond to that as well in some personal way, saying, I know it's extremely hard for all of us to be who we are. We're told how to conduct ourselves, what is smart, what is fashion, what is this. We're told everything, and yet each of us are this wonderful color, and it feels sometimes the things that are pokey about us, that are different, we squash that down, and then we don't feel really great about ourselves. So seeing two people being incredibly courageous and just telling a story that would normally just been told with a typical husband-wife story, and just having it told with these two people, super moving. I was saying, I was as a viewer watching as we shot this and made this, I was feeling things that I've never felt before for protagonists. I was seeing dynamics that were fresh and new. So seeing love through another angle was really a beautiful thing for me, and I didn't expect that. The things that restrain us as human beings, our fears, are things that we have to go at. We can't, most of us don't, right? Most of us avoid the things we're scared about and try to make our lives conform to experiences that don't trigger us, don't trigger our fear capacity. And so maybe we don't grow, maybe we don't experience things because we're scared. We don't travel, we don't date that person because we're not sure it's gonna work out, or we don't take that job, or whatever it is. And we confine ourselves. And I think just the basic premise of taking fear as the primary emotion that is afflicting the main characters, and having them, because circumstances won't allow them otherwise, to punch through that fear to get to the other side, I think it's structurally, emotionally a beautiful thing for audiences to feel like, wow, if I go at my fears and I experience the worst possible thing, my worst thing I can imagine, I can come out on the other side and I'm still standing, or I learned something important. That resonates with audiences. So I do find this genre very hopeful and a great vehicle for saying powerful things that can stick to us. To sense someone so incredibly open and receive it like that, it shatters all of the things that you have in you. And that's true for him when you're just speaking to him, as a human being, so giving. He doesn't protect himself at all, not even a little bit. Just an extraordinary human being to be around, and an extraordinary actor to direct. I can't say enough about him. I'm still trying to understand how Jonathan exists in the world. I told all 7 of the actors in Knock at the Cabin that every one of you has every right to feel bad for yourselves given what's happening in the story. You're not allowed. You are not allowed. So find another way. You can get angry. You can use humor. You can use artifice to try to trick your way out of things. Find a weapon to fight, to stay alive, because we love watching characters fight for their survival emotionally. after like 3 days on the set, after 3 days of shooting, he was like, he came over to me and he goes, I've said more dialogue today in these 3 days than I have in my entire career in front of the camera. And I never worried about it because he was the right human being. And I know he was, you know, a little bit nervous, but came with such commitment. He's so tough on himself, so I don't need to be tough on him.
Really tell me a lot about it. He just said there was this story. There's a cabin, and I read it, and it was combined two of my biggest nightmares: home invasion and the apocalypse. It stayed with me a long time because I think it forces you to kind of put yourself in the situation and kind of think, what would you do? It's just deeply disturbing and pitched at, it's such a fever pitch of kind of conflict and there was just so much going on and all confined in this one space with kind of very few characters. So it was, I found it really, really powerful, really moving. And I think he's an absolute genius in this genre and as a storyteller. I think you kind of develop this kind of second language, really. We kind of were on the same page, and his direction is just, he has this way of putting notes articulating notes in a way that kind of gets right to the heart of it, and he doesn't really have to say a lot for you to understand exactly what he wants. I love working with him. He's just so warm and really nurturing, just so, I think, just really brave, and like what we're seeing from him now is just some really bold storytelling. He kind of expects kind of absolute kind of perfection, and it's brilliant because it really kind of forces you can never really sit back and relax, even if you're in a scene and you're just sat in a chair in the background. He can see you, and you have to be in it, and it's I find it quite a thrilling way to work. The cabin is a perfect setting for something like this because it's a place where it's just so isolated, anything really could happen, and you're so far away from kind of any help, so it just makes it even more kind of disturbing. There's this real, like, kind of manic kind of fear that comes with him, and he's a character who's also kind of in reform. He's obviously got a shady past, but I think where we find Redman, he's actually kind of doing okay in life, and he's kind of in a good place, and suddenly he's hit with this huge kind of burden and decision to make. He's kind of very aggressive. He still has kind of a lot of anger that I think he's kind of struggling with, and we see that come out in lots of different ways. I love kind of big, bold characters like Redmond. There's so much to kind of play with. But it's, I guess the challenge with that is kind of finding the colours and finding kind of not pitching it as, because you could play him in so many ways, really. He could be just, the anger could be kind of the only thing you really kind of see, but there's other things going on there. Dave is amazing. He's got this just incredible presence. I mean, he's physically just this kind of mountain of a man, and just really sweet and just a lovely guy. And he's got some huge, like, really, he really has the heavy lifting with the dialogue, and he's great. It's so deceptive. His kind of, you look at him and you think, he's this kind of big, kind of strong, quite intimidating looking guy, but he's just got this such gentle kind of nature.
Cameras are so all over the place and in really not random, but like angles and shots that I have never experienced before. And in a way, it's almost more freeing because I'm like kind of unaware of where the camera is at times, because it'll be in the corner of a room or above our heads or like right in our face, but it kind of adds to the surreal element of the whole movie and does somehow, even if the camera is right in my face, just makes it feel freer and adds to it. I've never played anyone like Adrienne before. She's a young single mother. She's a cook at a diner. I remember her being described as really tough, but has a big heart and is really trying to connect. And I found it really interesting to just explore what that would be like to have a kid and to leave my child to do what I think is gonna save the world and benefit the human race. It's been a lot of fun. It's kind of crazy because I think the story is so dark and intense. So when we're actually in the cabin, so far it's mostly like really intense, somewhat violent scenes. But I think because everyone in the cast and Knight himself, just like a very warm and kind energy with everyone. So it's been like a bit of a kind of a crazy experience because it's so intense, and then like immediately after we're doing a scene, it's really, everyone gets along very well, and it's just like a very warm environment. So it's kind of ideal, I feel like, for things that are so intense to have that, because I think it just makes for a really safe environment and group, which I think you need if you're being like really vulnerable. And
we had a conversation, and Knight didn't offer me a job or say anything about knock at the cabin. And then we set up another Zoom call for when I get home, and I think we had another conversation, maybe 2 more conversations, before he actually told me there was a project he was working on. And he said he wanted to send me the script. And I think he just wanted to feel me out, and I think he was kind of familiar with my career, but like you pointed out, this is very different from anything I've ever done. So I think he wanted to know me as a human being before he started talking to me about working with him. Man, this character is really, he's weighted. And there's like all the chunky dialogue, and I was like, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. Like, this is what I've been waiting for, because roles like this don't get offered to guys like me. I'm typically, everybody wants me for action stuff, and they kind of, I've kind of been fighting to get out of that box, but people naturally, and I understand why, want to put me in that box, because I fit the bill, and I'm good at action. I play that guy, I can be that guy, but I want the deeper roles because I want to prove myself as an actor. So those roles are just super few and far between, especially leads. It just don't happen. So this is kind of the opportunity that I've been wanting for years and years and years. He's a very demanding director, but it's weird because it's not overbearing. Like, he's such a pleasant, friendly, lovable person, and he's so supportive. I think that also he takes pride in wanting to bring the best out of you. But also, I think that this is his vision, and you have to deliver his what he wants, what he sees. So I respect him enough to completely trust in him. The biggest message in this is just sacrifice. Help somebody, help people out. I'm willing to give up something I have to help somebody else who has less. Don't be so greedy. Be willing to love.
Where immediately you start to think, if this was happening to me, what would I do? And that goes on many different levels. You've got your basic invasion story at the beginning where we've all had that nightmare. God, what if someone broke into the house or got into the building? So you go from like a survival story, which immediately grips the audience, to a kind of a moral, ethical, spiritual dynamic that the audience then has to ask themselves, well, what do I think about that? Can I even believe in that? It is terrifying. I think even by Knight's standards, everyone's a little bit shaken by this story. There are things that happen in this movie that I would guess that people have never seen happen before. And as performers, you know, Knight is challenging us. He's challenging us to push our own boundaries creatively, to have faith in him. He's having faith in us. You know, I think artistically that can be like just a really great breeding ground for creativity and inspiration, is to ask people to kind of go past their comfort zones. And in this story, it's, I say robust because, you know, it's like the scene that we're shooting right now. We're talking about sacrifice on a level, sacrificing your life in almost like an ancient and primal way, which none of us, you know, have ever explored anything like that before. So we're all putting our trust in Knight completely. And I think he's putting his trust in us as well, that if we tell the story correctly, it'll go past the kind of shocking, sensationalist aspects of the story and go into something deeper and something moving and hopefully touching as well. So I think what's interesting about Sabrina and about our four like messengers, let's say, the four people who have to deliver this message to Eric and Andrew are normal people. They're normal people who are living lives. Sabrina is a nurse. She's a caring woman. She's someone who's close to her family. She's someone who didn't really have a belief in faith or God necessarily, and then one day started to have these supernatural visions that changed the course of her life. And she felt compelled to be here where the story begins.